up? It is Bones, and today it is Bane Day here at the Necro Zoo. We're gonna go ahead and take a look at pretty much most of my Bane figures that I have in my collection, talk a little bit about them, and then break it down to which are my favorite figures of Bane that I own. Now I have very quietly surpassed 2,000 subscribers. Now, besides YouTube emailing me every week saying to become a partner with them, and me basically telling them to kick rocks, pretty much no fanfare. But if you know me, it's never been about the subscribers or the views. It's been more about that I love to do this and I love collecting DC figures. Now, don't get it twisted. I really appreciate all my subs, and that's why I try to be active in the community and reply to all the messages and run a pretty cool and calm, informative channel about DC figures, basically centered around McFarlane DC Multiverse right now, because that is who has the license and who is making the current DC figures. Of course, I have been collecting DC figures for years now. I didn't really grow up like a lot of people with like superpowers and stuff. That's like too early for me. I grew up with like later lines, which are more like sentimental to me. I don't really like to do giveaways and things like that because a lot of times when I do them, people seem to not be too interested in stuff like that. So I do want to offer up some shirts that I am still sitting on from when I was wrestling. Now these could be two versions. You have just a regular Bones shirt, and then you have also Necro Zoo. But the only catch is that I only have a small supply left, but I do want to get rid of them. They're just sitting around. So if you're interested in a large or in a small, I do have some in each of those sizes, so it's going to be real small. It's not like that important or anything. But the other thing is that just message me on Instagram and ask me, you'd like a large or a small, and I'll ship it out to you. Now there's just I think I'm only going to do 2 large and 2 small, but you could pick which ones you want. If not, no harm done. It's just I'm just putting it out there to give something back to my viewers. But let's go ahead and get into what we're here for, and that of course is Bane. Now, like I said, I never really started off with superpowers or anything like that, or not even the 89 Batman really. I mean, I know of it, and I never really like collected the toys or anything like that. But the first toys I do remember buying or asking for were these Legends of the Dark Knight figures. I think I even found these at Kmart, like rather interesting. It doesn't exist anymore, but this was like a cool Thrasher version of Bane, and it's kind of like underrated because it does have some nice sculpt work, a cool design that you don't really see a lot. His gear is more reminiscent of like a wrestling gear, like a luchador style, which is another thing about Bane, is that I first like remember him more from like Nightfall, and then after that, of course, the animated series. And I always thought it was cool in the animated series. They went more for like a luchador style, villain. But all iterations of Bane to me are awesome. Even as we know, we are waiting for the Dark Knight wave to arrive. I already have mine. It's on the way. I might get it tomorrow, but it could be tomorrow or Monday. Of course, that's going to come with the awesome Bane. And that's the thing, like people would say, oh, I don't like the Dark Knight Rises Bane because he's not like the comics. But everybody like falls over Heath Ledger's Joker when that Joker is not like the comics. I mean, you take versions that they give you and you just take what you like from it. And I have to say that Bane from Dark Knight Rises, that's like my favorite part of that movie besides Anne Hathaway. But the more I like look back on that movie and like watch it, it's not perfect, what movies are, but I just love the presence that Bane brings. and like he's so like quotable, and it's just awesome. So pretty cool. We're gonna be getting that figure. Of course, I do have the Mattel Dark Knight figures, a lot of them, but I won't show that Bane until I actually do the review of the Bane. But going back to these Legends of the Dark Knight, these were like more up my alley, which was like a more darker, like kind of monsterish version of these characters. Like check out the Batman. Even though hardly any articulation at all, very minimal, but they were just so cool and sleek to me that I collected a lot of them when I was younger. So that was the Thrasher Bane. I've always wanted to pick up another one of him just to like repaint it and add some cool detail. Like I think he has some scars or like some slash marks here on his chest. I'd really like to do some detail paint, and these aren't too much. You could get them, online for like $20 probably. But yeah, that's like my first real Bane figure that I remember having. And then we move into the DC superheroes. Now this one's rather interesting because the way they designed him, he looks really cool from the waist up. But the legs, this is notoriously known that they made him like so squat, and nobody really knows why. I mean, it is what it is. He was a cool figure for the time. Actually, there is another version that I do have, but it's in box and it's in the storage. But that's like a European release, and he actually has fists, and he has like some brass knuckles, kind of spiked brass knuckles. Now, I don't know if I'll be able to find a picture of that one online, but I actually do own that one. But like I said, it is mint on card, so I'll probably never open it. But this one did come with the little Osito accessory, which was like, I think this was the bear that he had when he was in prison. And it had like a knife up its butt, and when people would mess with him, he would like pull out the knife. That was like, his secret compartment to like kill people. But yeah, the story behind Bane I really got into, and I've actually kind of patterned myself around him, like not completely, but I am a big proponent of like being like physically strong. I have hard work that I do, and I don't shy away from having to show my strength. But another thing is that also in the work that I do, I'm like in charge. I'm really smart. I'm a leader. I know I deal a lot with how the operation runs. So that's kind of like Bane, the original version from Nightfall is that he's not like some big brute or like just muscle. He's actually like really smart and tactical. And that's what I always liked about Bane. So that's basically why he's my favorite villain from DC. But this DC superhero version, aside from the European release, he also did have an alternate camo version. Now the differences are just, for some reason the original one had silver like on the white part of Bane's mask, and this one actually has the white part, but his like top is more like a brown military color, and of course he has the camo pants. But none of these actually have fists. These are still just open hand figures, but for what they were really cool at the time. Now this brings me into one of the first customs that I actually ever made. This was like years ago now. Now we're looking, a long time ago. And what I actually did was I took this upper body and I actually used the boots as well, but I latched them on to, I think it was Atom Smasher's legs from DC Universe Classics. Now this allowed you to get the DC Classic leg movement and just a little bit more statuesque Bane, but it fixed the part where he's like so squat. So I always, like this figure. This is also where I learned that when you put green on the veins, you should kind of like keep it toned down, like don't go overboard, because then it looks a little bit muddled. But yeah, one of my favorite customs, to where I kind of wanted to make my ideal version of Bane because of the way they made the legs on this one, even though these are still cool in their stylistic form. But I just love my custom Bane that I made. Pretty awesome. Now you're jumping forward a lot because after there was a point where I wasn't really collecting that much, but I did always see like the Arkham games and DC Direct, but I just never got into that big like monster Bane. I do appreciate it for what it is. It's just never like something I was like really into. I like I said, I do appreciate that they went a different way, and he does look really monstrous and scary. The no shoes was like a weird thing for me as well. But what ended up happening was that I actually found this figure online. I think it was $10, but he was missing a leg. Now this is from Arkham from DC Direct. So what I ended up doing was modifying some McFarlane Bane legs and fitting them onto this figure. And then I just gave him like my own style, like what represented Bane to me. And for what it is, it was cool. It's like I was barely learning how to customize, and I knew it wouldn't be perfect, but I just thought that I could add my own touch to a figure that I got really cheap online. But he does have a little bit of presence up there on the shelf, not one of my favorite ones, but I thought I would include him, checking out at the figures. Now, another version of Bane that I always really liked was from the Batman animated series. Now, this is not to get confused with the Batman animated series. This was the one where where it had more like of a almost a sort of anime style to it. Really love that show. I actually have the series here behind me, but in this version of Bane, I'm not sure if they actually sell the way he comes out at first, which is like in a trench coat, and then when he hits his button to pump in the venom, he actually becomes this big, like, kind of Hulk brute. So yeah, really interesting version. It's actually a really clean figure, and I've actually held on to this guy for a long time. I actually bought this at the stores. I think it was Toys R Us, and I still own him. But pretty nice rendition of Bane. Pretty cool. Like I said, I might want to see if they have the form of Bane before he actually turns into this form, but I'll check it out. And then going into, now this is Mission Masters, I think. They do have another version of this, which is like in a 3-pack, and his chest actually lights up, so it has a cool light up feature. But I just got this one online for pretty cheap, but it is a cool mask on this guy. And this is where you're getting into more of like an amalgamy of like different Banes, because he has a crazy thing on his back, which is kind of reminiscent of what the Arkham one had, but it's just like out of nowhere. You wouldn't know why he had it, but it's there. And then this is where you're getting into like a more recent version of Bane, which is like where he always has a tank, he always has venom, and he's always like giant sized. But yeah, I do enjoy this figure. He's cool just to have up there on the shelf. And speaking of giant size, that actually brings me into this huge Bane that was like in a 2-pack for that Spin Master. And I just bought him because I think I bought it for $10 on Target online. And I was like, hey, I'll take a big Bane for $10. And he's actually pretty nice, has some cool articulation, but he is kind of hollow. But he has some cool detail. I might do some repainting on him just to give him a little bit of pizzazz. But he does have his tank in the back. Minimal articulation, but what he does have, like the hand swivel, is pretty cool. Once again, really no fist to speak of. I think only the animated Bane version had like double fist, but all of these are just open hand versions, which is rather interesting. But he does have some cool presence, so I'm not too ashamed to have him in my Bane collection. And now we're moving towards the end. Now, I love this DC Direct version of Bane. This one is highly sought after right now on the aftermarket. I mean, you're looking at $100 probably. Pretty cool sculpt work on this one. Now, this is supposedly supposed to be straight from the pages of Nightfall. This is in a series where they made, I think about 8 figures from the Nightfall series. But limited articulation, but what he lacks in articulation, he definitely has in style and shelf presence. Now, I would argue to say this is one of my favorite Bane figures that I own. Kind of tight joints, but DC Direct was actually known for that. Like the feet barely have any articulation. He does have wrist swivel, so you could, But once again, look at these hands, and these are kind of reminiscent, for Nightfall. This is like reminiscent of what McFarlane did with the most recent Bane. Having like those attacking, grabbing hands. But love this figure, and actually, he's really heavy. He's like some solid plastic, even though it is fragile at the joints. But love having this guy in the collection. By far, one of my favorite Bane figures. I would even think I put him above the next one that I'm going to talk about, which is the DC Universe Classics Bane. Now, I don't want to talk bad about this one because he does look the most like straight out of the Nightfall comics, like just almost perfectly. But what I do not like about him is he has so little articulation. Like the head barely moves at all. You cannot look up at all. I mean, it's just, there's nothing there. And then the old school DC Universe Classics crotch cut, I just really don't like anymore. Like it has those crazy L gaps that just, once you open his legs, forget it. You're never going to make him look good. It just, takes you out of it. Now the boots are nicely sculpted. He has cool detail. Of course, this was a 4 horseman sculpt, so it's going to be top tier. And then, of course, he does come with double fists. One of the only Bane figures to actually come with double fists. I mean, I do like him. He's another one that right now in the aftermarket, you're looking at least $100. And then I love the back sculpt on this guy. Just the awesome wide back. It'd be a real hard decision if I had to pick between these two, because although this one is like sought after by a lot of people, I actually prefer the DC Direct one for some reason. It just has more of a sentimental value to me. But both of them, of course, are cool to have in the collection. Just some beautiful, beautiful Bane figures. And now we go into the McFarlane era. Now, of course, McFarlane put out this Last Night on Earth Bane, which a lot of people despise. But I kind of have a soft spot for this guy. He was like the first time I actually saw that McFarlane wasn't going to be scared to like think outside of the box and give us characters and designs of characters that we had never seen before. And a lot of people talk about the skin tone, the gray skin tone, but now of course we do know that was a choice to keep like the minimal paint down. He has very little paint details, but another thing that people had a hard time was actually connecting these. Now I actually made 2 of these, so I mean I actually studied hard and figured out how to build these without having them come out from the sockets. I did do like a whole video of building Bane for dummies, which a lot of people liked. Really got down into the details about how to build him without having him fall apart on you. But of course I did my own repainted version. Now this is one of my favorite figures. I have to say it again. I mean, this one does have the Scarecrow that I modded to be higher up on his back, which is more reminiscent of the comics. And he had like some tanks on the back of his belt that were not painted on this one. I mean, like I said, there's minimal paint. So I added all these cool details, added some bronze, which is one of my favorite things to add to a Bane figure, is a little bit of like brass to the metal. And added the regular skin tone, some green veins. This one I just really enjoy having up on the shelf. And it's something that's like really like kooky and obscure, that you're not going to be really seeing a dead Scarecrow riding on the back of a Bane, which is something that I really have to compliment McFarlane on, is giving us things that we never could imagine or think that we were going to see. Now, of course, we do all enjoy classic versions of characters, but I mean, I've seen those hundreds of times. This is really something interesting that will be on your shelf that people will ask, like, "Whoa, man, that's, awesome. Like, what is that?" Pretty cool, and an awesome addition to the Bane collection. And now we're going, of course, to the coup de grace, and that is going to be the recently released Bane from McFarlane. Now, this is, like it says, Nightfall on it, but I'm not necessarily sure that that's correct. But this is more of like people's vision of Bane nowadays, where he has a tank and he's like really big and like all venomed out. But the articulation on this guy is pretty good on the lower part of the body. You can get some out of the top, but it's a little bit limited. But I mean, there's just no denying that this guy could get in some cool poses. And he's really fun to pose and really fun to put with other figures and just have him like, beating the brakes off of Booster Gold and Blue Beetle, like just different stuff like that I really enjoyed posing this guy when I first got him. Now, of course, I now have 3 Banes, and I do have my custom version that I actually repainted and put on some custom fists, added some brass to the tank, like a lot of cool little details, made the mask, the front part of the mask, a little bit more white. And I still, of course, have one in the box now. This one that I repainted, I actually got online on a bundle, and it was $65. So I was like, cool. The Bane, a Ninja Spawn, which I mean, that doesn't really mean anything. And then I had one more figure that I actually received, and that is this Arkham Origins Deathstroke with his card, with his sword, with his stand, and I got this for $65. So if I could put this online, because I do own 3 of these already, so I don't need another one. But if I could get at least $40 or like $30 out of this guy, that means the Bane would have only cost me like $30 or $25. So I'm gonna be checking out putting this guy online and seeing if I could get rid of him, and then I'll have my extra Bane that that I only paid $25 for, which would be pretty awesome. But yeah, Bane, awesome character, awesome villain, awesome Batman rogue. Hopefully, I've been seeing more people like customize, and I did find some images. I'll put them up of like they took off the tank and they made this one a more like Nightfall version of Bane, and I think McFarlane could actually do this, so he's probably going to do that just to let everybody have a chance at it that didn't have it, and to make it a more Nightfall version, like with Fist, without the tank, and just change it up a little bit. And that might be another release from McFarlane. But anyways, guys, that's my Bane collection. You guys keep hunting out there, keep collecting, keep customizing, and I will see you on the next one.
They used to call me Crazy Joe, but now they can call me Batman.